Greetings out there in YouTube land. This is Morris Man. As always, I thank you guys for coming to my channel. Today I'm going to do a video that I hope is going to be very useful and helpful to the beginner. And even some people that are not beginners that don't know. Because again, one of my favorite sayings that someone told me at least about 10 years ago. You don't know what you don't know. So here it is. This is the spiel. At this point in time, I don't know what I'm naming this video. But I guess it will be something along the lines of what's most important in the guitar for you when you're picking a guitar. And there to me, for me personally, there's three criteria. Gotta look good, gotta sound good, gotta feel good. And not necessarily in that order, because if push comes to shove, I can live without a guitar that's not extremely appealing to me to the eye, because it's not really about that. Number two, what it sounds like. And a lot of people are going to be surprised that I put that one at number two instead of number three. And the reason why I guess I'll try to go into that spiel now. As far as the sound thing, because it's a difference of opinion as far as my pickups don't sound hot, so I got to take them out and put these in. If you're a professional recording musician or artist, you know this 100%, and I stress 100% of the stuff that's recorded in a professional studio is treated with effects. 100%. The sound of your guitar when you plug it into your amp, when you sit in your bedroom late at night, it's going to sound totally different when you're in a professional recording studio. And I stress professional recording studio, not some dude that got some recording gear in his bedroom and he think he has a studio. No, you got a practice setup. That's what you got. And don't know nothing about frequencies and effects that makes recordings sound like they do. When you're recording in that environment, 100% of your instrumentation is treated with something, meaning that you got either compression on it or a combination of compression, reverb, chords, flange, the list goes on, wah, phase. And one might say, well, what about the stuff that don't have that? Guess what? 100% of it got compression. Compression to me is the most important effect in the chain. And it's interesting because most people don't key in on compression because you can't hear it. I mean, really, it's like what we hear is the final product. And what we see on TV is the final product of a movie. Before it's edited professionally, color correction and all that. We don't see the makings of it, because it looks totally different from the finished product. And it's the same thing with recordings. A lot of people say, well, I don't hear any effects on the vocals. There's always compression. And what compression is this. Compression keeps a signal within these two lines. The top line representing the high notes, the bottom line is representing the bass, the bottom notes. And usually the bottom notes consist of bass stuff. Because if you don't use compression, don't know nothing about professional recording, as we know, the lower tones tends to kind of go down in the mix where it's hard to hear it. It's not up in your face. And for an amateur or someone that doesn't know what he's doing, he's just going to simply turn up the bass. But then when you turn up the bass, you got to turn up everything else to balance it out. So basically what you did is just increase your volume, and that's it. And that's not the problem. The problem is these tones have to be compressed to a point where a good example is when you got a singer and at some point in the song, usually at the end, he's hitting some serious notes. So in order to keep him from bleeding out the volume, meaning that he's peaked out the meters because that note is too high, for the stereo spectrum, what compression does is takes that frequency and keeps it here. So you could scream at the top of your lungs and it's not going to go here. It's still going to stay there. If you set up the compression where it's going to be able to deal with those high notes and those low notes. And I think compression is the unsung hero recordings, because when I used to listen to recordings, I'm like, why don't my stuff sound like that? The vocals. And it's like, I used to hang out with guys that were doing it. They said, you're not using compression. They told me what compression was. So 100% of the professional recordings have some type of effect to it. You know, it is again a chain of effects like compression, reverb, wah-wah, phase, or whatever. So number three is the guitar has to sound good, and that's the most important one, or feel good. That's the most important one, because again, as far as the sound, it's going to get treated in the professional studio anyway, so they're going to jack up that volume or that sound and make it sound like, recording. So number three again is your guitar has to feel good to you. That's the most important to me, because what happens is this, for most of us, when you first get your guitar, it's from somebody that know nothing about guitar. They just a family member or parent or whatever, and they tired of you complaining about that you want one, so they go out and get it. My first guitar, which I kept for over 25 years, and then it kind of got lost or destroyed, unfortunately. My mother bought it from, I guess a store like Sears. My mother didn't know nothing about guitar. She went in and said, "Hey, give me that $34 guitar," and it was done. So then she brought the guitar home. Action was terrible. Didn't like it. And she's like, I'm not getting you another one till you play this one. So then next year, I made some progress, even though the action was terrible. Didn't feel good to play. So then she sent my oldest brother out with me to buy me my next guitar. He knew nothing about guitars. So he went out, and I specifically said, I want an electric one this time. So he went out and got an electric one. Give me that $50 electric one right there from Sears. And I think it was either Kingston or Tasco. Action on it was terrible. And I told my nephew, who's about second year into playing now, I've been teaching him. He started just joined his first band. And he used to come back when he was a little guy, and he's like, "Man, I want to play." I said, "No, you can't play with my guitars. I'll get you one to play for yourself." So I told him, I said, "You don't know how fortunate you are that your first guitar out the lot was picked out by a professional musician. Me, knowing what he needs as far as a good feeling guitar. The action has to be there. It has to feel good for him to want to play." And then also just picked him out a good guitar as far as tone. So, a lot of people go through that process or that step as far as the first guitar is purchased by a family member that are not musicians, and they just pick the cheapest guitar they can find and give it to you. And you struggle with that piece of junk, for a year or whatever until, somebody buys you a better one. So it's interesting that when we think about this, we don't think about this in the sense that get the right person for the right job and get them started, because it's bad enough when you're a beginner. If someone gave you a $500 guitar, you're going to struggle. Even if the action's great, even if it sounds good, it looks good, it's just normal to expect that you're going to struggle. The first time you form your first bar chord, that some of the strings are going to be buzzing. Because I told my nephew, I said, here's some things that right out the gate you're going to experience, but that's the norm, and you just got to stick with it. When I show you that first bar chord to strike, all those strings are not going to ring out clearly and clean. And then your rhythm is going to be really shoddy at this point, because, you at the stages of beginning to learn. But if you stick it out, you get there. I'm proof of that. Hundreds and millions of guys are proof of that when you stick it out. Because initially, it sounds terrible, And then when I started to really kind of learn the feel of my instrument, or the dexterity, as they say, one of my older brothers said, you sound kind of decent. I want to start playing. So, he made a serious run for about a month. I look up and he's practicing. I'm like, cool, just keep doing it. And then after a month, he's like, I'm done. He's like, I just don't want to do it. I'm expecting the results that I see that you have accomplished. But I'm like, I've been doing this for over a year and a half now. That's why. It's not going to come to you in most cases in that short period of time. But if you stick it out, you got it for life, And he just really wasn't interested in doing it. But the point of the video is this. What's more so important than anything is your guitar or instrument feels good to you, feels comfortable for you to play. Because time to time I get people that ask me this question. I've addressed it in many videos. Why do you got that duct tape on the side of the neck? It look terrible. Here is why. I'm a professional recording musician and touring musician. I play 8 to 10 hours a day. I repeat that, 8 to 10 hours a day when you probably play 2 hours a week. It's a big difference, because the longer you play, the more your fingers become exhausted. And I came up with this technique that a lot of people thought was crazy at first, but my duct tape thing has now reached overseas. I got a friend in England, and he said, I turned my friends on to this, and everybody taping up their guitars because of you, instead of getting the metal sand down. I don't like to feel, and it's just the idiosyncrasy for me, or a pet peeve, or whatever you want to call it. I don't like to feel that metal. Even when it's sanded well, you can still feel it. I don't like that feel. So I came up with the duct tape, and I'm like, now I can play. I don't feel that metal, which throws me off, and it just throws off my vibe. And it feels good, to play with that. Because I've never had anybody in the history of me playing when I came off the bandstand. You did a good job with that tape, but that guitar don't look good. No one cares what your guitar looks like. They cares what the sound that you can bring out of it. That's it. So that's why I've addressed that. And because a lot of people didn't understand why I had it. It's like, is the guitar broke or what's wrong? Why you got tape on it? It's like, it feels good to play in a professional recording environment where we sit down and play anywhere from 8 to 10 hours a day. So that's why that tape is there. And you got to use duct tape as opposed to any other tape, because duct tape sticks better, and then it's extra, I guess, woven, and it just feels good because you can't use masking tape. You can't use, any other type of tape. Duct tape is the tape of choice, and it'll stay on your guitar as long as you keep it there, and then you can always take it off if you choose for one reason or another that you don't want it on it no more. So I'm going to sign off, and I guess the video entitlement might be what is best. What do you look for in a guitar when you're learning to play? So until next time, take care and thanks for watching.